All right, and you know, I don't even really have an intro for this one. We weren't going to do one this week, but then you said you had a special question, so
Well, don't make it sound like it's, special or anything. I had a question because no one else had any.
I just
I kept it simple.
okay. Well, it's just fuck it. What's your question then? Let's do this.
Alright, what is gonna be your favorite turn-based battle system and real-time battle system,
Um,
and why?
with real time, are we still talking like RPGs?
Yes, we're still talking JRPGs, but real-time battle as opposed to sitting there taking turns.
Okay.
Thi things like the Tales series are real-time.
I can just only really think of Tales, Star Ocean, that one weird frog game, Radiant
That
History or Radiata
that one weird
Stories.
well, see, there's a couple, and, there aren't as many, but I figured it would be
Okay,
easy and
well,
worth talking about.
turn based is fucking obviously for me the press turn system.
Well, I was thinking, like, what game shows that system best? I'm not
Well,
gonna say, like, don't name the system, but what game has the best combat of turn-based or real-time?
well, I'm just saying in
W-
general because it's not oftentimes that you can just blanket say a system.
Okay.
So I mean, I like the press turn system. It's taken a couple forms and throughout its lifespan. I mean, if I had to specifically go with
Pick a
the
game.
system, I would go with
Just
Royal because what it has just the most insane amount of options in terms of how you can approach any situation in any iteration of the press turn system. Because I feel like in order to fully answer the question, I have to answer what makes the press turn system in general so good.
in that case, let's not
So,
name this. Just pick the
well,
game.
let,
Like,
let me
what?
let me let me just explain this, and I'll get into it, okay? Because this is why it's my favorite turn-based system, and why the press turn system in general is my favorite system is because it's a system where, first of all, everything is very upfront and apparent both for you and for the enemy. There's no oftentimes trying to figure out what crazy shit the enemy can pull versus what crazy shit you can pull. All the rules are laid out and they can be used and abused both by you and by your opponent.
Okay.
So it's a very fair system and it's very interesting because it's not just about what can you do to press your advantage, but it also how you can leave yourself exposed to allowing the enemy to abuse that on you. And that's what makes it such a great system. And then in five specifically, specifically Royal, the amount of options you have on top of combat for further abusing the system really make it enjoyable because there's always multiple paths to victory. It's not
Okay.
just hit the attack button. Yeah, you can hit weaknesses, but there's also baton passing because baton passing in Royal, you get incrementally stronger each time you
Okay.
do it. Um, there's technicals now in Royal where if an enemy is electrified and you hit it with a nuke spell, that can down an enemy in
Okay.
place of a weakness. And the synergy that creates between party members and the way that can change how you plan your turns, that's what I enjoy. And that's really, even though it lacks the difficulty to really push you to make use of all these systems, I mean, you do earlier on, but towards the end of the really after a certain point, I mean, it's Persona. After a certain point, it's just pretty easy.
Hmm.
But the variety of approaches that it gives you is really fantastically fun to play around with and abuse. And it's the type of thing where the more you play it, the more you understand it, the more you can abuse it, the better you feel about it.
Okay.
You can actually, because this is a weird thing to say on a pod, on a like a public thing, but like I'm playing Persona 4 with my dad right now,
Okay.
and watching him not get the combat, like kind of learning it and figuring it out, and we trade the controller back and forth, and all the little optimizations that I know how to do and how to pull off versus him, where he's not making anything that I would call like an implicitly bad choice, but
But
just
just not those finer details that make it better.
yeah, just even things like an example is if the protagonist uses a Moss spell that costs 10 mana that knocks down 3 enemies, and they all
Hmm.
have half health,
Yeah.
and then he'll use Yosuke to use Maguru, and then use Yukiko to use Miraji. Well, if you just use Miraji, it deals over half their health anyway, so you can just have
Okay.
Yosuke guard or physical attack or just do something. You don't need him necessarily to do anything,
Okay.
and it's not wrong to use Maguru. It's just little optimizations. And I know that sounds like a really lame example, but that's just one example of just a little tiny optimization you can make that will have long-term effects on your efficiency to pull off the dungeon because SP conservation plays such a big role.
Okay.
And 4 is such a basic game in terms of its mechanics. I mean, there's only physical, the 4 elementals, and then Hamamudo.
Yeah.
Royal is basically that doubled and then some more. So it's all those little optimizations, but just on this great scale that offers so much synergy and stuff like that. So
Okay.
that's my favorite turn-based system.
Okay. So Persona 5 with its many, many options and things you
Specifically
can do.
Royal,
Okay. All right.
because like again, guns. I wasn't a huge fan of the idea at first of guns reloading in battle,
Hmm.
like after every battle. But and again, I still think the damage should be reduced a little bit. But I like that they give you, again, in terms of options, you can either do a physical attack, which will have a lot of concentrated damage, or with guns, you can spread out your damage across targets.
Okay.
So that's just an example of how in Royal, now that guns reload after every battle, they're more viable to use in battle. It gives you another option for how to approach any specific circumstance.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying specifically Royal.
That makes sense. The things they changed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think the one that or the game that shows what I like the most is going to be Cold Steel 3. I mean, Cold Steel 1 and 2 are similar but not quite as far up there. And what I like is there's so many things, but none of them are that big of a deal that you can't skip one or not know one or not understand one and still not get it to work.
None of them are like the dominant strategy.
Exactly. It feels very easy to learn. Hit them with an attack, hit them with the right spell, whatever, and you'll be good enough. But there's a lot there. If you actually want to master it, you've got, 3 different types of attacks or more. Each weapon, there's 4 different kinds of weapons that can stun enemies. You can switch around who has what spells, but their actual abilities are personal abilities. In 3, you even get like commands that you can issue to your people to give them specific buffs or specific new enhancements or abilities. There's a lot of things in there that can give you that little edge if you care to learn it. But if you don't care to learn it, you don't have to. And it gives you as much depth and complexity as you want to get out of it. If you just want to play a straightforward, simple hit the enemy until they're dead and play through the story, it lets you do that without worrying about the 15 different ailments, the 4 different weapon types, the God knows how many different levels of, you know, Sepith or whatever the hell they're, you know, it's all that stuff. It's only there. It only matters if you want it to matter. But if you want it to matter, there's so much there to keep you going forever.
Yeah, I mean, Cold Steel is definitely my second, like outside of the SMT Atlas verse,
Hmm.
it's definitely my other go-to for good turn-based combat because, like you said, there's options, and we kind of talked about this earlier when we were shitting on Final Fantasy. Sorry, when I was shitting on Final Fantasy,
All right.
where it's not about what level are you at? Do I need to go back? Do I need to grind? It's what is my strategy? What do I have equipped? What are my orbiment setups?
Yeah.
And what are my character? What's my party op? Am I playing that optimally?
Hmm.
It's that kind of strategy versus just the raw numbers game of is my level higher than their level.
Exactly. There's thought put into it if you care to put the thought into it. You can just level and punch the enemy in the face and get through it if that's all you want it to be. That works. But, once you start getting up past easy difficulty, once you start trying to learn all those other things, you notice the difference of actually building your party, of actually hitting enemies with weapon types that they're weak to try and stagger them, of building your people to counterattack and critical and get all these extra battle points and all those other little things that you wouldn't have thought about unless you were trying to think about them.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the few games that next time I play it, I am gonna go up to hard.
I did. Restarted playing it recently and I upped the difficulty, and I've noticed a difference of thinking about some more of those little things and how to, all those same little things that I didn't notice the first time because I didn't really care too much. And now that I want to play it, I'm enjoying all this little added, I don't want to say difficulty, but added complexity.
Yeah, I mean that's I think the benefit of a hard mode is that it should push you to really understand the battle system and all
And
its
that's
intricacies.
it's like, and that's the fun thing with me because I am playing on a harder difficulty, but it doesn't necessarily feel harder because I understand the systems more. So I think it feels the same last time when I was just punching everything and it wasn't too hard, but it wasn't too easy. Now I'm using those systems the way that they're actually meant to be using, and it still doesn't feel too hard because I actually cared to take the time and invest my knowledge in them now.
And that's, again, it's the same thing with Persona, and that's where I keep saying I wish it hard was harder throughout the duration of the game because towards the towards the latter more than half, really, towards the latter 60% of the game, really, it's only for the first two or three dungeons that you have to really understand all the nuances of the combat to
Okay.
survive. After that, the power curve is so high, you have so many options for survivability that it's fine. And that's where I just wish it was harder because, again, hard should be pushing you to really understand the intricacies and using these intricacies
Hmm.
to your advantage.
Yeah. All right. I think that would be my pick.
Do you have any other honorable mentions? Because I think it's not the easiest thing in the world to find a good turn-based combat system. So if you have any honorable mentions you want to throw out,
I'm gonna say if you're looking for like an ATB turn-based, then Chrono Trigger I think does ATB really well.
yeah, it's probably the best implementation of ATB.
Hmm. That would
Um,
be.
okay.
What do you got?
Again, my honorable mention for best Jerpagas or favorite Jerpagas.
Hmm.
Radiant Historia.
Okay.
The way combat works in that game is it's kind of grid based, where there's a 3x3 grid,
Okay.
and enemies are certain sizes. And the way it works is your moves, your skills,
Hmm.
actually push and pull enemies on a grid, and you
Okay.
can stack them on top of each other, and then all your hits damage all enemies.
Okay.
So it's not just hit the attack button, hit the attack button. It's manipulating the enemies and manipulating the turn order so that
It's
you can,
put it's positioning the enemies so you can hit more than one at a time.
well, yeah, and also manipulating turn order so they don't split apart because they split apart
Okay.
at the end of your turn.
Oh, okay, they try to separate back out, and your goal is to like mush them in together and
Yeah,
kill
mush
them
them in
before they
together and
separate.
yeah,
Okay.
and it's not much, but it's amazing how even just that little change adds makes each battle feel unique.
Okay.
Because again, it's not just hitting the attack button. It's not letting auto battle win the battle for you.
Okay.
So that's I can't really think of any other games that to me have like super amazing turn-based combat. I mean,
Um.
like I enjoyed Etrian Odyssey, but it's fairly straightforward for what it
Mm,
is.
yeah. That's.
Like it's pretty much bog standard turn-based, just ramped up the difficulty. It doesn't have anything interesting to it like the press turn system or the grid system.
That's. There's a lot of them I've noticed that have very straightforward, simple turns. It's like I almost want to recommend Resonance of Fate. I personally didn't really like the combat of it, but I can appreciate it for being something unique and interesting that some people did. But yeah, you know,
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a
unique one. If not, maybe not good, but unique.
well, I mean turn-based in general, it comes back to what I was saying last week where I feel like way too much is trying to be Final Fantasy when they make a turn-based uh,
hmm
JRPG that it
They're
be
all turn-based or Dragon Quest, and they're super standard for it.
and I think with Persona 5 success, which you know what, I'll add on a question at the end of this because I have a somebody else
Okay.
brought it up. But you know, hopefully it shows that there are people who want, you know, turn-based combat isn't inherently dead. People are always going to be okay with turn-based stuff. Otherwise, board games would just die out.
hmm
It's just doing something new to keep it interesting.
It's a way to keep the same thing that we've been doing for 30 years or more, actually way more, but a way to keep that interesting and feeling fresh and not old and dated.
And I haven't played it, but I played the demo. The demo for Octopath Traveler showed promise.
It looked interesting. I haven't played it yet either, to be honest, but it looks.
Did you play the
Is it?
demo?
No, but I watched enough of it where it had like that armor break system.
Well, it's a combination of that and then the Brave and Default system from Bravely Default,
Okay,
which is where you can basically like either default save your turn and then next turn you can go twice,
interesting. Okay,
or you can like use 4 turns at once, but then you have to wait 4 turns if you don't kill the enemy.
okay. So you can manipulate the turn order even more to
It,
try and just do like big power hits.
yeah, except instead of a turn order, it's just all at once.
Okay,
And that, like on its own in Bravely Default, wasn't hugely interesting to me, but combined with the break system in the demo was kind of interesting. It showed potential.
okay.
I just Octopath Traveler has never really super duper appealed to me.
Me either.
So I haven't played it. I'm who knows? I may at some point. It's fucking
Mhm.
COVID season, and I'm here for God knows how long. So fuck it.
It might get there eventually.
Yeah, it's on the list. It's low on the list, but it's there.
Yeah,
So
I'll agree to that. All right.
transitioning into active time, and this is where I'm screwed.
Yeah, you have any thoughts, or should I? I kinda am torn between two.
Graces and what?
Grace, believe it or not, Graces isn't actually on there. I've been playing it, and the combat's fine, but it doesn't like stand out for me. So
Okay,
believe it,
I'm
as much
curious what your
as much
other
as I
ones are.
love Graces, it's not on there. All right, I'll do one, you do yours, then I'll do my other one.
Go for it.
My first one, I think I'm gonna go with the 7 remake, actually. The Final Fantasy 7 remake, which is it felt Kingdom Heartsy, but it was active with the combat and everything, but there was still a feeling of retaining the old ATB system with spells and skills, real-time movement and real-time standard combat with a weird kind of enemy, not quite shields, but basically shields that you could break and like stun the enemies for extra damage and all that fun crap. And then the way that it encouraged weapon changing, like each weapon had a unique skill that you had to use that weapon to learn the skill, then you could use it with any other weapon. So it encouraged you to keep changing a weapon and learning new skills and using new skills to keep getting even more. I felt like it encouraged you to to change things up, even though it was still run around and hit the enemy and wait for your special attack to show up. And then mixing between the 3 characters, it's one of those few active time games that I actually did switch between the whole party, because I almost never do that.
I mean, okay.
I don't know. I usually don't do that. I usually play the main character and that's it. But
I
with
can
that one,
only just think of like two other examples that have that, and they force you to.
hmm but like in most of the trails, or not the trails, the Tales games or the Star Ocean games, you can do combat as any of the party members. But I always just stick with the main character because he's the main character. But while playing 7 Remake, I actually played as everyone, not just Cloud the whole game.
Just like for fun, or did the game make you? Because I'm thinking of like Tokyo Xanadu, you have to switch characters to abuse weaknesses.
No, for
You can't just play one character the whole game. And I haven't played Seven Remake, so it's a genuine question. Like I don't know.
no, it doesn't make you. There are definitely some enemies that are weaker to getting shot at by Barrett, but I mean, really not enough to make any kind of difference. You could easily just run up and hit them. I did it for fun, and because they all had unique skills, so being able to use their unique skills the way I wanted to, not the way the computer wanted to, made me feel like I was being better or more efficient.
Okay.
But for fun, not because the game forced you to. But yeah, for fun and for the enjoyment of it.
I mean, I have to ask because ever since Yeast switched to the party based system, I
Okay.
I okay, I only played 7. I have not played 8, which is the one that everybody really likes.
Okay.
But I've hated it because
hmm
it's just felt like the most tedious shit. Like switch to
Okay.
the spear user for the enemy that's weak to spears. Switch to the sword for the enemy that's weak to swords.
No,
Switch
I
to the
did.
axe for the enemy that's weak to axe. And it's like, the game had a great flow to it when it was just Yeast Origins and you had one fucking character and you
Being
just sliced the shit out of everything.
Yeah, that was fun.
Making me switch characters just to exploit one dumbass weakness that only exists because you need a reason for me to switch characters.
It's kind of annoying sometimes. Yeah,
It killed pretty much the whole game for me.
I get that. And to answer your question, at least regards to Final Fantasy, no, it did not. It was not like that.
Yeah, well, that's the impression you're giving. So
Yeah, but no, it wasn't like that. It was for personal enjoyment, not for exploiting weaknesses.
okay,
But that's my first one.
okay. I don't have a whole lot that I can comment on it because I haven't played 7
hmm
remake.
hmm
I've only played 15, which sucked ass. So
It, by comparison, it did suck ass. The foundation was there. I would say if you've played 15, imagine that, but just better in every single aspect.
that's what a lot of people say is that 15 feels like the prototype for what 7
It does.
remake was.
It does. So yeah, just imagine that better in every way, and that's basically what 7 felt like.
Yeah. So this is a hard one for me because I am an absolute fucking snob when it comes to action games.
Okay.
because Devil May Cry has ruined me.
Hmm.
Like, just absolutely annihilated me.
Yeah.
So to like give my seal of approval to anything,
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be an action game. I mean, the Tales ones aren't action games, but
I
I get
know,
your
but there's no Tales game that I would give my seal of approval to because they all have
flaws.
some massive flaw with their combat that keeps it from being great.
Yeah,
Like
makes sense.
the fucking to this day I hate having stamina in an action game. That drives me fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
So anyway, and like Star Ocean doesn't have stamina, but it also doesn't have a whole lot of complexity to it.
Th- Things to do.
Yeah, it's mostly just spam the art.
Yeah.
So honestly, what I'm going to end up giving it to, and this only happened because I mentioned it earlier, is Ys Origin
Okay,
because that game is just fun. It
that's
playing
fair.
as Yuna, I can't remember her fucking name.
The chick with the axe.
Yeah, I don't think it was Yuna. It was ignore the typing of the keyboard. La di da di da di da di da. Okay. La di da di da di da di da di da di da di da. Unica.
Oh, okay.
Um, and just the charge, the way the charge spin attack had momentum and would linger. The way uh, the the hammer move broke shields and shit. Like it just had a great flow to it. Like and particularly Origin because the other games had a tended to have more Zelda-esque world design, but
Okay,
because Origin was a tower, there was still some backtracking, but
but not as much.
you always felt the momentum of the game.
Okay.
And that's like it's a game where momentum you can it just feels like you can go through the game on one long slide. And it's not too long, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's like 8 hours, I think 6 to 8 hours.
Oh, okay. That's not bad at all.
Yeah, it's super short. It has just enough complexity to take it through that time period, and it's just fun the whole way through.
Okay.
And there are very few games that just
Are just
manage,
simply fun.
yeah, that just manage to be that perfect little package where there's just not a whole lot that I would really complain about.
Okay.
You know, it's not like this is some perfect game, the premier best game of the year or decade, whatever. It's just a
Mm.
fucking good game that just doesn't have a lot of fat to it.
Okay. I can respect that.
So that's my pick because, like I said, everything else has, as a snob for action combat, this is something that keeps it from being
Okay.
particularly interesting or enjoyable. And
Okay.
I could go through every single fucking Tales right now and break it down, but I'm not going to.
I appreciate that. All right. My other one that's kind of tied for the spot, which is going to sound really weird, is another Final Fantasy. It's Lightning Returns.
Okay, yet another one I haven't really played. So
I'm not surprised. I can't imagine a whole lot of people actually have.
I mean, I
But
for
what?
me, it's just I see a time limit. I haven't fucking finished Majora's Mask ever. I've never been able to super get into it because I'm just someone who cannot cope with being
Timed?
timed in a way where every single action has to be meticulously planned out.
I get that annoyance. I felt that at first playing the game, but that hassle kind of went away the more I played it, to where the end of the game I had time to waste. But, I get your point. But what that game did is it managed to find a way to keep one playable character interesting and not getting stale. You basically had 3 builds that you would switch through constantly, kind of like the systems in the first 13 where you're switching roles. It felt very similar to that, but quicker, and you did it more often. And each build had basically 4 abilities, whether that was a spell or some kind of attack
Or
or
a
some
buff, I'm
unique
guessing.
or a buff, some unique type of guard, something like that. Each one was built with 4 abilities, and they each took up some amount of stamina, as you were just complaining about stamina. So you would switch to one build, use your stamina attacking or healing or whatever. When you run low on stamina, you switch to another one. The first one, stamina slowly builds up, you use the second one, you switch to the third, and you switch back and forth. But you could build it in such a way where each one fit a specific role. For me personally, I had one that was all physical attacks, regular attacks, power, doubles, all that fun fancy stuff. I had one that was for spell attacks, all the different magics, healings, things like that. And then I had one that was for defense, special blocks that heal, dodges, things like that. And switching between them, depending on what the enemy was doing, when the enemy was, building up a big attack, switch to the defensive one. If it was an enemy who was weak to magic, I would spend more time on the magic build. If it was an enemy that was weak to physical attacks, I'd spend more time on that one and switch between them constantly. It made it feel fast and engaging in a way that was still felt traditional turn-based of picking spells and, hitting enemy weaknesses, things like that you would expect from an RPG, but still fast and constant like an action game. It felt like a weird actual mix between the two instead of incorporating elements of one into the other.
Well, I don't. Were we talking on the show, or were we just talking in private about whether or not 13 counts as a turn-based game?
That was on here. We were talking about 13.1,
Yeah. Well,
and
I was just
there
gonna say that whole series kind of straddles the line,
it does.
and I appreciate definitely how being able to control your character definitely makes Lightning Returns the one that closest resembles a traditional action game.
It did.
Especially since positioning always mattered in the series. You just
And
kind of
do you
had
know
to
what
really,
deal with it?
well, you had to do weird stuff. Like if you canceled, like a blitz attack would have you run towards an enemy, or
Hmm.
well, oh god, what was it? The one I think it was the spellcaster move where you just basically shit out a spell like a little
Okay.
ball. You
Ruin?
always, yes, you always
Yeah.
bounce back when you did that.
Yeah.
So if you stacked a bunch of those, you could actually manipulate your character back away from the enemy.
Hmm.
But you always had to do some obtuse shit like that to manipulate where you were rather than just being able to move.
Which was super fucking annoying on the very few times that enemies did AoE attacks or,
Yeah, whatever the
attack
fuck
with
you had to do
range.
use it for.
Yes.
But I remember doing shit like that.
Hmm.
It's and it's just interesting in my head how like had you been able to just use the left stick to move your character and then your D-pad to navigate the menu, would
What would
they
it have
would
felt like?
yeah would it have just instantly felt like an action game instantly just because you could move your character?
Almost. I'm gonna say if there was still a standard attack that you didn't have to wait for the ATB gauge, then it would still feel like an action game. Because basically, that's what 7 Remake felt like. Is you could still move around with one stick in real time. You could navigate through the menus in real time, waiting for an ATB bar to fill up to use the things in the menu.
Well, because that's what 12 is.
But for 12, isn't the standard attack also on the ATB gauge?
Yeah.
Whereas 7, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Standard
See, that's
standard attack is separate from waiting for the ATB gauge. ATB is just for spells and skills. And standard attack is just always.
Yeah, and but that's what I mean is like 'cause 12 still, I mean, it resembles an action game more than it does an RPG, but in a lot of ways, mechanically, it's still an RPG. You just can move your character around, which Lottie Fiddly fucking Da doesn't affect jack shit.
It reminds me of Dragon Quest 11. They added a mode in 11 where your player character could run around the battlefield,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it made zero difference on anything whatsoever.
yeah. I didn't use that mode.
Neither did I. I just turned it off because it was just a pointless waste of time. But it was
I
there if you wanted to run around in circles, I guess.
I feel like we shouldn't discuss this on the show, but fuck it.
Fair.
They announced that the S content is coming to the PC and PS4,
I did not know that. Cool. I've been slightly thinking about replaying that, so
but
maybe I will at some point.
that they're still porting the Switch version, so you don't get the graphical enhancements of the PS4 or PC.
It's dumb as fuck.
Yep. I I so anyway,
I don't know. Anyways,
so
you
just going back, one thing I want to it goes back to turn based,
okay?
but I think a good turn based system is really hard to make, and I think Final Fantasy X, my playthrough of it has really highlighted in part why.
Okay.
Because in Final Fantasy X, realistically, the fight, every boss fight boils down to the same thing, which is cast haste on your party and blast the ever loving shit out of it.
That's the standard Final Fantasy tactic.
And you can tell they tried to do more mechanically complex fights.
Hmm.
Those just tend to be the fights that everyone hates.
Yeah, because they're mechanics and they're annoying, and you have to do it the right way, and it's not just what you know.
To be fair, most of the mechanics suck shit though.
Yeah, I believe it.
And that's what I think, makes it hard is how do you make a fight that is mechanically interesting enough that you can't just spam your strongest moves and win, but doesn't feel so restrictive that it doesn't feel like a gimmick. Because like my one of
That's a
my
fair question.
few complaints with the ending of Royal
Okay.
is that the new final boss is more of a gimmick fight
Okay.
because the way it works is he has all these ads,
Yeah.
and the ads resist some things, are immune to some other things, and are weak to some things.
Okay.
And you can't damage him until you've destroyed all the ads.
Okay.
So you basically have to abuse baton passing.
To kill all the ads as quickly as possible to hurt him.
Yeah, and if you don't
That's
kill all the ads in one turn, he adds them all. He adds all ads back at the end of every turn.
oh shit. So you have no matter what, you have to get rid of them all at once.
Yeah, like
You
on
can't
his
kill like.
turn, he
Okay.
regenerates them all.
That's kind of annoying. I
So
see what I see what they were going for, encouraging the baton pass and multi elements and stuff. But that sounds kind of annoying.
so yeah, it's just kind of a gimmick fight because you just use your attack, baton pass, use the attack, baton pass, use the attack, baton pass, whatever.
Hmm.
Attack, you don't really feel like there's any kind of,
Strategy.
well, there's just one strategy.
Yeah.
That's it. It doesn't have that feeling that what I was praising the system for earlier was not feeling like you're pigeonholed into one strategy. So that
And now
to
you
then,
are.
yeah, have the final boss, in this game with all these complex systems be just baton passes.
Okay.
It's not taking advantage of it, and that's, same thing with FF10 really highlighted it because, like I said, I have gotten through every fight by just casting haste and having Waka, Tidas, and Orin slap the shit out of the boss.
Yeah.
Except for those few fights where you can't do that, and those are the fights that really start to suck shit
Yeah.
because what makes them like Unalesca.
Okay.
She casts zombie on your whole party, and the way
Okay.
zombie works is it makes it so that healing spells damage you.
Yeah.
She has a move that's called Megadeath, where if you're not zombied, it's an insta kill.
Okay.
So you
So y-
have to balance when to cure the zombie so that you can cure your character versus when she might use Megadeath and kill your whole party.
okay.
Problem is, it's pure fucking RNG because there's no like cycle to how she uses anything. So I mean, she used Megadeath 3 times in a row without doing this move that zombied people. So basically, Tidus and Waka just died 3 times,
In a fucking row.
and Orin just had to revive them because like this is the fucking fight. I don't know, dude.
That's
Just RNG sucks,
yeah.
and you know,
I feel like mechanics are hard to
yeah,
get right. Like I almost feel like if you want mechanics to be there, they have to be minor, where they're not like battle changing. But then that kind of feels lame too.
yeah. There's a fucking fine. They have to walk the line between being optional but
Mhm.
beneficial. I think
Yeah.
they can't force you into a strategy,
Yeah.
but they also can't. But if they don't exist, every fight just becomes the same thing.
Hmm.
Because I'm thinking of like the Persona bosses that don't suck shit, which is all the other ones. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not even that it sucks. It's just not great.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. I'm kind of thinking of those two, where the special mechanic is a bonus. If you do it, then you get some enhancement or whatever the hell it is that you get, some damage bonus at the cost of changing your regular strategy and using the special mechanic.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, I think not to suck it's to cock some more, but the press turn system itself really embodies that because you can go for the extra turn, but sometimes you don't want it or don't need it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like the system does not force you to abuse extra turns every time.
No,
If you're new to the game, you probably will want to do that because you won't know how to maximize damage or whatever.
because it
But
sounds great. It just another turn always sounds great on paper.
yeah, but like if you need to use a turn to heal or you would rather do a physical attack or something, that's there.
Yeah.
And depending on the situation, just as viable.
Hmm.
So it has that balance to it.
Okay.
So is there anything else you wanted to say on battles?
Oh, I hope they're good. Hopefully they're good.
In what?
I don't know. In general.
Wow, in general, I hope it's not shit.
I mean, am I wrong?
It wouldn't be sarcasm if you weren't, or if you were, whatever.
Whatever.
So, my sort of question,
Okay.
if we can get existential here,
Oh God.
it's just I was talking to somebody and they were upset that Joker got into Smash Bros.
Okay.
Because they were like, Persona 5 is so niche. Like, why did a niche character like Joker get in?
Okay.
And then they announced recently that Persona 5 has sold, as of December, Persona's this 5 and Royal collectively had sold 3.9 million,
Okay.
which was before Royal released worldwide.
Hmm.
And then just 2 days ago, they announced that Royal on its own has sold 1.4 million,
Nice.
bringing the total sales to something over 4 million.
Not a bad number.
And it's like, is that really niche anymore? I agree that it's not mainstream, like AAA mainstream, but
But it's not a unknown little
yeah, and this
indie
is this is kind of the overall question is what is your definition of niche to you? Because I think it's a very personal word.
I have honestly never thought about it.
To be fair, I didn't think much about it either until he brought it up.
Um,
Because it's funny, like
have I
franchises
have I ever seen an advertisement for it
where
anywhere? I have seen commercials or banner ads or whatever for Persona,
okay,
but I have not seen banner ads or whatever for Tokyo Xanadu. Tokyo Xanadu, I would call a niche topic or a niche game because it is so unknown that there aren't even advertisements for it. Whereas Persona 5 is big enough that they have an ad department.
there's Persona 5
Final
is big enough that Joker is in Smash.
that too, but it just randomly out of nowhere, the easiest definition that comes to mind is it is niche if there is no advertisements and it just is supported solely by word of mouth and continuing fan
But
base.
because I've seen banner ads for like Cold Steel 3,
And Cold Steel's,
niche.
I, eh,
It's niche.
it is, but not as much.
Not as much as before the Cold Steel when it was Trails in the Sky, but it's
Sure.
still to me it has to do more with how well it's known outside of its specific genre.
Okay,
And I don't think anybody outside of Jerpagas knows what the fuck Trails is.
probably not.
Whereas Persona 5, I will grant it, has broken that barrier.
Has broken the RPG barrier where the other people know about it.
Yeah, and
Okay.
but again, like I said, there's no fine line. To me, another really fascinating one is Fire Emblem,
Hmm.
where fucking nobody had heard of Fire Emblem, and then,
Until Three Houses came out.
well, no, there's an evolution to this.
There,
Nobody had heard of Fire Emblem until Smash Bros. Melee in the West,
yeah, yeah, that's fair.
and then the GBA game came out that they ported the second Game Boy game. It was just called Fire Emblem in the West. I don't fucking know its surname. It's Japanese surname.
Yeah.
And word of mouth was really good for it. And
Okay.
same with Sacred Stones was kind of under the radar. But then Path of Radiance came out, and certain circles would not shut the fuck up about that game.
Okay.
I'm not talking about your mainstream media. It still
Hmm.
wasn't fucking Halo. But
Yeah.
I've heard from so many people how great Path of Radiance is.
Okay.
Back in the day, I was hearing,
Okay. I never did, but okay, I'll believe you.
but it was still fairly niche. And
Hmm.
then apparently the series was on its last fucking legs, and then they made Awakening, and that was the one that saved the franchise.
Yeah, I remember that one coming out and things picking up on the what was it, 3DS?
Yeah, and that was when the series, in my mind, became fairly mainstream.
That makes
And
sense.
then Three Houses came and just elevated it to another fucking level.
And that's the one that brought it up to like almost household name kind of deal.
It's hard to say if it wasn't already fucking there though.
I
with
don't
with
think so.
Awakening. It,
I don't think so. I think
Give me a
the
second here.
three.
Let me pull up
I think
Awakening sales numbers.
I think Three Houses being on Switch and not just a handheld is what did it. It's like Awakening was the big jump that saved it and brought it back, and I think Three Houses is the one that actually made it well known outside of what the fuck am I gonna play on my 3DS?
I just know it has a shit zillion fucking
It
reps
does.
in Smash.
It yeah, it does. Fire Fire Emblem in general, what is there like 9 of them now or something?
It's ridiculous. As of March 2020, Fire Emblem Three Houses has sold 2.87 million copies worldwide. Okay, Persona 5 has apparently sold more copies than fucking Fire Emblem Three Houses, and yet I feel like more people know about Fire Emblem than know about Persona. What the fuck? I don't understand. I don't understand. This question is so weird. Cause like, okay, another one. Nobody knew who the fuck Yoko Taro was. I would
No,
not call Nier Automata niche.
no. I would call the first Nier niche.
Oh yeah, dude, fucking nobody knew about the first Nier.
I think it's
Nowadays,
I
nowadays
think it's
everybody just
platinum.
YouTubes it.
I played it all the way to the final fucking ending like 5 or whatever the fuck it was. God, that game got repetitive. But I think that was platinum. So if that wasn't Yoko Taro, that wasn't Nier, that was platinum. People bought the game because it was a platinum action game.
No, there's one reason people bought the game, and
Well,
it's the
sexy
reason people
robots, but
2B's ass.
sexy robots. But I'm trying to be,
2B's ass made that fucking game.
yeah, it did help a lot. But on a professional level, as we're pretending to try to be,
Let's not beat around the bush. Pun.
but all right, from a gameplay perspective,
Yes,
I think
butts. That's what I'm saying.
butts and platinum, but
Platinum
butts.
butts. They are
Yeah,
robots.
but yeah, people didn't buy it for Yoko Taro or any of that stuff. It's because it was a platinum action game with butts. And then they learned about Yoko Taro, and he got a little bit recognized because Platinum Games brought his name up.
Even then, I mean, it'll be curious to see how well the new Nier remake does.
It depends if
'Cause,
they fix the fucking endings or not. Because God, that game was repetitive.
well, I just not having the sex appeal, I'll be curious, long
Yeah,
term.
yeah, me too. I'll
Because
get it, but I'm curious.
I mean, to pretend that sex appeal doesn't sell is,
No, it's like it
and
definitely does.
let's not pretend that that didn't help the sales of Automata. Not that that has any impact on the quality of the game. We're just talking sales here.
I like to pretend that it didn't have that big of an impact, that the quality itself was the majority of the sales, and the sex appeal was a minor addition. I don't know how much of that's true or not, but I kind of like to hope that. I feel like that particular one isn't a game that was sold on sex. It was a game that was sold on quality,
Well,
and the sex was there,
well,
as opposed to some other things that flaunt that a bit more.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with having both. When you can have
No,
both sex appeal and quality game, poof, you got a winner.
true.
Because let's be real, waifu saved. I was going to say Fire Emblem, but they saved Persona 2.
They say Persona 2. Well,
2 as in
yeah,
as well, not Persona 2.
yeah. It's like I was gonna say Fire Emblem, but yeah,
Both of
Persona
them.
they definitely helped. Again, I like to pretend that that's not a major part of it, but you know what? I might be wrong. I don't know.
Well, it is a major part of it. It's just the question of whether or not that's the only thing of substance to your game.
Hmm.
And that's because one of the things that is really difficult, I think, nowadays, I don't know, maybe just in general, is holding a conversation about something after it's been out a while
Okay.
because there's only so much to say. I mean, there's a lot of hype in the lead up to like a game,
Yeah.
and people talk about like, oh, what's it going to be? What's it going to be? What are you hoping it's going to be? Blah 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 whatever. And then
Hmm.
it comes out and everybody's talking like, oh, I found this, I did this, I did that. It's this, that, the other thing.
Yeah.
But then after about 3 months, everybody's played the fucking game. Everybody's moved on.
Yeah. It's gone now. Yeah.
And love it or hate it, the waifu fags with their
Don't
pointless
stop.
arguing
They
keep
don't
it
stop. They keep going.
they keep it in the discussion. they keep threads on the social media sites, on the discussion boards, on your Reddit, your 4chans, whatever, where people go,
Hmm.
and they keep the game visible.
That actually makes a depressing amount of sense.
Whereas when you make a good game that comes
The
out, you play it, and it's
people
done,
don't talk about the mechanics months after.
they tend
They don't
not
talk.
to.
No, they don't. But you're right, they do talk about the ladies
The
for much
ladies
longer
are the
time.
memes.
Yep.
Because let's be real, Devil May Cry is a great series, but if you want to start a discussion, don't talk about mechanics post fucking Virgil and talk about more power.
Fair enough.
Motivation, baby. But
Fair.
yeah, just going back to the niche thing, it's hard to gauge, I think, in one sense, because where the conversation is so stratified right now.
Okay.
You've got the video game journalisms, you've got so many different sites where the discussion is taking place that it's hard to feel like there's any unified conversation about things that really accurately reflects sales.
Okay.
Like to give an example, The Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
I in the little bit I tend to like just in general try to avoid the internet,
Yeah.
but that there was a shitstorm over that game pre-launch
Yeah, there
when
was.
the story leaked, and
Hmm.
everybody thought, oh, I'm canceling my pre-order. I'm canceling my pre-order.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
Game sold fucking gangbusters. Surprise, I know.
Yeah, as everyone knew it would.
And that's where it really comes down to like obviously the conversation that you have on the internet, and I put quotes around that because there's whatever, isn't inherently reflective of the mass populace.
Yeah.
I can that's one instance, but there are tons.
Okay.
It,
Yeah.
it's why petitions don't always work. It's like, oh, you can get a petition of 1 million people saying they want something, but then you put it out and you only get like 150,000 sales. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, what happened to those 1 million people? Well, some of them didn't care. They
They
just
just.
went on and
So,
added their name to it because whatever.
yeah.
Some of them were bots, and
No.
some of them didn't get the message. But let's be real, just it takes nothing to go on the internet and make a complaint.
It's easy.
And because of that, it's not reflective of
Accurate numbers or accurate thought.
yeah, or of the general thought. I'm not going to say accurate because it can be someone's feelings. Just and sales don't dictate quality,
No,
but just because a bunch of people complain about something on the internet doesn't mean it's going to bomb.
doesn't
And
necessarily mean a bunch of people actually feel that way are going to make that difference on it.
yeah, and just because a bunch of people praise something on the internet doesn't mean it's ever going to break out of its niche. People have
Hmm.
known about Persona for how fucking long, and then 5 just finally brought that attention to the mainstream.
Yeah.
But ever since Golden, at the very least, good luck finding someone on, again, quotes, the internet who didn't know about what it was.
But whether or not they actually ever played it or cared about it in any way.
Yeah, it's that weeb shit game.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those.
So, I don't know. There was no finite answer. I just thought it was an interesting statement.
Okay. Yeah. Well, where do you draw the line between niche and common?
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's like the gap between okay and good that we talked about, like not bad and good, that gap
Mm,
where it's really hard to quantify things on just this binary scale.
there's got to be a range somewhere in between. It's not black and white.
Yeah, where you're not niche, you're not mainstream, and even then there's like middling grounds, like your Fire Emblem. I swear everybody fucking knows about Fire Emblem, but then I looked at the sales, it's like 2.87 million. That's it.
Mm,
I mean, I know it's a fairly recent game, but just for the amount of press and hype that there was around that game, I thought for sure there would be
more.
way more sales than that.
Huh. Well, I did my part. I have it.
I mean, fucking Breath of the Wild. I know different timeline, different scale, but just to give an idea of something that is mainstream,
Yeah.
just for the other end of context.
Okay.
And I'm not saying it has to catch up to this or whatever, but March 2020, 17.4 million copies.
Damn, that's a big number.
Yeah, so you're definitely not there.
No,
Fire Emblem and Persona and tons of other games,
no.
but you're not
But you're
you're not Octopath Traveler that sold 1 million and it was like, wow, really? You guys made it to 1 million? I'm stunned.
good job. Yeah.
Yeah,
Somewhere in the middle. Somewhere in the middle is a good spot.
it,
I feel like somewhere in the middle is where you get the funding to actually make something decent without the pressure to make something that sells.
yeah, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I also think, well, nah,
Yeah.
no, I haven't thought that thought out long enough to get into it now.
All right, we'll save it for next week.
So, all right, this actually run on for an hour. I'm stunned.
Yeah. I didn't think it would. I figured this would be a quick little half an hour since last week's was so long.
Yeah, fuck it. This is this is a next week's episode. We're ahead of schedule. Savor it while it lasts.
Yeah, are we ahead of schedule because we're skipping a week?
Well, I had a really nice excuse up on the website that did not use the phrase skipping a week until you
Did,
just said skipping a week.
did you have a good excuse?
Yeah, fucking SMT5 and Nocturne, baby.
Oh,
This is a good week, man. This
whatever you
was
say.
this was the week that I looked at video game news and was like, holy shit, something good happened.
Hi.
Fuck. And then a whole new world started playing. A whole
Whatever you say.
new world. Okay, I'm just gonna stop now.
Thank you.